Well, good evening and welcome back to the Friday night preview show live on the Seasiders podcast. Welcome from whatever platform you're listening to, whether that's YouTube, Facebook or Twitter. We're great to have you with us, and what a show we do have lined up as Blackpool, the League One side, are taking on Premier League West Bromich Albion, the third round of the Emirates FA Cup. And I'm joined by two guests this evening, the one and only Tom. Tom, great to have you back on the show. We always have these issues, don't we, when I don't mute or unmute people. Sorry, Tom. How are you doing?
Yeah, evening all. Good to be back.
Good to be back with a bit of a voice this time round. And obviously, we've got another guest, as you might have seen on our promotions. We have West Brom fan Louis, who also is part of the West Bromich Albion, the Baggies podcast. So we'll introduce Louis into the screen. Louis, great to have you on the show, and a big game ahead this weekend for you guys at West Brom.
Having me. Great to be on.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to have you on, and hopefully many Baggy fans in the chat as well, as we've tried to share it with all. Gareth's already in, eager as ever, wishing us all a very good evening. Is there that's fine. Obviously, we've got you two on. What I want to kind of start on this evening is the FA Cup. It's a big tournament, Tom, which many teams have won. Blackpool have obviously won it, and I believe West Brom picked up the trophy a year after Blackpool did in 1954. But is the magic of the FA Cup still there, Tom?
Through the years, it's been tough, hasn't it? There's been some cracking games, sort of up and down, sort of the so-called leagues with lower teams playing Premier League teams, etc. Is there the same feel as it used to be? Probably not. I think for the lower clubs, like Marine tomorrow, for example, it's going to be sort of a cracking evening for them to play Premier League opposition, probably the biggest game in their history. For me, it isn't as quite magical as it used to be sort of back in sort of the early 2000s, but it's certainly a meaningful cup still. I would say domestically, it's one of the trophies that the big clubs still go for. So overall, I'd probably say yeah.
Lou, what about you? Obviously, we're all quite young, well, on the show anyway this evening. Do you still think the magic's there for the FA Cup? Is it mainly for the smaller teams in the competition?
Yeah, I feel the magic for me is still there. This particular round, the third round, where there's still usually a couple of non-league teams like Marine, and there's Chorley, I think, in there this year as well, and a couple of others. It's for the magic of the FA Cup to still be there for me for the smaller teams is good, because I love watching, as you said, the Marine and the Tottenham clash is a huge one. In no other competition in the world would you find things like this happening. I'd say for a lot of teams in the Premier League, I think it perhaps isn't as magical anymore as it was, as you said, in the early 2000s. But I think with, when the competition gets a bit further on, it does get a bit more serious for the Premier League teams. But at the moment, in the third round, I don't think the Premier League teams take it particularly seriously. But obviously, the lower league teams, it's a great opportunity for them to play in bigger stadiums and all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's still there.
I guess for teams, and no disrespect to kind of West Brom and teams in maybe the middle of the Premier League and towards the bottom, I guess it gives them a bit more of a chance, doesn't it? Do you think, Louis, that they can go on and win the FA Cup? We've seen in previous years, Portsmouth have got close. Cardiff, for example, in years gone by. Do you think with top teams not taking it as seriously that the lower league Premier League teams have a decent chance of winning the competition?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of, perhaps, I wouldn't say necessarily us, because, obviously, as I'm sure you'll know, we're going to be involved in a relegation dogfight this season. So I think our focus would tend to be more towards that. But if you look at some of the mid-table teams, and I think about somebody like, perhaps, I don't know, Crystal Palace, Everton, somebody like that, where you might not have as much to play for in the league. Perhaps Everton, maybe this season, they've got a bit more to look forward to. But, you're not going to win anything, perhaps, in the league. Maybe go for the FA Cup and see if you can get a good run together and maybe even lift a trophy at the end. That'd be great for the club. But in terms of West Bromwich Albion, I wouldn't have thought that we would be too focused on the FA Cup, considering the situation that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, we'll come and speak about that, because new manager Sam Allardyce is bringing his boys to the Fylde Coast, a place where he started off his managerial career. So we'll come on to that. But Tom, I think we're having a few issues with getting people into the stream. I had a few messages, so Not many comments as usual popping through. So I've had a few messages. We'll try and sort that out for those watching the live stream. We're trying to get on the live stream. But Tom, FA Cup memories for you, are there any that stand out? Was it a game that you went to as a kind of a youngster or a game that you watched? Anything for you?
I think going through the years, when sort of born in 91, so sort of between then and 2000, obviously quite a young lad and don't have many specific memories. I know I definitely sort of researched Blackpool, watched their DVDs and stuff, and playing Arsenal at Highbury was a massive one. And for me, the game that stands out was Charlton away. Although we lost, we played some incredible football, and Hillsey scored a hell of a goal, chipping over the keeper. And it was only sort of just losing out 2-1. But we haven't had in recent years really any big FA Cup matches. I think we've played Leicester and Portsmouth over the years. I think Portsmouth beat us in the last minute. There's not been really standout memories for me. Charlton being one of them though, because we were a lower league then. We outplayed them. I think they were Premier League at the time, and we were really unlucky not to force a replay. And that just stands out for me because it was one of those games where we really showed what we could do against Premier League opposition. And there was quite a lot of big Blackpool following that day, made a lot of noise. And yeah, it was just a good memory. Although we lost, it's one of those games where it's not like you've missed out on a playoff final and, you can go out and enjoy yourself and done yourself proud and sort of look back and go, yeah, we did well today because we haven't lost anything in a sense. And we've played really well against Premier League opposition, but nothing really in recent years because we've been awful in the cup. So yeah, that's about it from me.
I'm trying to think of a game an FA Cup game where I've actually noticed Blackpool do something decent to beat a higher rated ranked team. But looking back, most Blackpool fans in the chat are watching. I can't think of anything in most recent years. Obviously, the Gazette did something on at the time at Southampton when we were in the Premier League. So I think they might be in League One at the time. I think obviously Ian Holloway made a few changes that afternoon, but I think as a Blackpool fan, memories for me don't really stick out. But there's, as I said off air, one game for me that stands out. Watching FA Cup final, it was Liverpool versus West Ham. West Ham trying to cause a bit of an upset at the Millennium Stadium, and unfortunately, it was that man Steven Gerrard that scored a late goal to take it all the way to penalties. And for me, that's one of the best FA Cup finals and matches I've watched in many years. And people might look at being Liverpool biased there, but over the halfway line goal from Xavi Alonso, there's so many different memories I think that stand out away from Blackpool for me. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think Wigan was a good shout, wasn't it? They beat Man City.
Yeah.
With that header. So yeah,
awful game.
It was poor, but I'll take that if I was a Blackpool fan. So.
Louis, coming to you, any kind of FA Cup memories for West Brom, or just another game that stands out for you?
Well, for West Brom, I remember I think it must have been 2014 or something like that. We beat West Ham 4-0. We were in the Premier League at the time, but we had a player called Brown Idei, who I think was our record signing at the time. And I think it was about £10 million. And he wasn't very good, if I'm being honest. But he had this week, and it included this FA Cup tie with West Ham, where I think he must have scored 4 or 5 in 1 week, and I don't think he scored again. So for me, that game stands out for me. But for non-West Brom, I have to remember that Bradford Chelsea game. That cup upset with Mourinho in charge. It was a fantastic game to watch.
We've got a few people in the chat now, mainly Gareth and Kieran who have joined us. Gareth said, I love the Spurs Coventry final. He thinks it was 1987. Coventry won 3-2, and it felt like a big upset. I guess back in those days, if you don't mind me saying, back in the 80s, that kind of the only thing you really look forward to, and maybe the TV, was kind of the FA Cup and the odd games that you got on the BBC. So a few there as well. Kieran Glover, I'm assuming he means as a Blackpool fan, he remembers Everton away. I personally don't remember that. Maybe it was a few years back. I've quite poor for me not doing my research on Blackpool back then, but a few memories in there. Obviously, if you in the chat, do leave a comment. We'll try and get as many people involved on the stream. But moving on, talking a bit about West Brom, Louis. Obviously, so you've been a fan since you grew up. What we do with all our guests is get them to talk about kind of their bringing up, how you got supporting West Brom, and like the FA Cup, any memories that stand out to you as a boyhood Baggies fan?
Well, the reason obviously I started supporting West Brom was I came out of the hospital, and the first present I was given was a Baggy Bird toy, the mascot. So I had no choice, if I'm being honest, but to be thrust into Albion colours. My both sets of grandparents, both sides of the family, both support West Brom. So I had no other option. In terms of going to watch West Brom, my first season as a season ticket holder was the 2010-11 season, where you guys were in the Premier League with us at the time. I do remember Blackpool. We were away at Bloomfield Road, and we had, I think it was 2 men sent off and we lost in the end. I remember that game quite fondly. I was quite upset about that. But that first season with Peter Oddenwingie playing up front for us was a real highlight. And then probably a bit further down the line with a few years later with Romelu Lukaku being on loan from Chelsea playing for us, and that game, the 5-5 against Man United, that was my personal favourite game that I've ever been to watch. But yeah, some good memories over the years, really, supporting West Brom, along with some not so good ones.
I was going to say, I've just been corrected here, by Kieran Glover. It was the 2012. Him and Gareth said, I must admit, didn't really go. I don't know why I didn't go to the game. I must have been playing football, so it doesn't stick in my memory. So apologies for getting that one wrong, Blackpool fans. Blackpool away at Everton, Premier League team at the time. Blackpool hoping to get back there after a year away, and relegation in 2011. You talked there a bit about West Brom, Louis, and I guess they've kind of been, and this isn't an insult, a bit of a yo-yo team in terms of being in the Premier League and then dropping down to the Championship for a year or two, and obviously going back up. Is that kind of, as a fan, that excites you, or would you rather be that team that's always in the Premier League and fighting for mid-table? Or is it something that quite excites you, that if we do get relegated, we know that we've got the players, that we've invested well in the previous year, got a chance? Is that as a fan you prefer, or would you prefer to be a permanent or prominent team in the Premier League?
Obviously, as a fan, we'd love to see us in the Premier League as much as possible, whether that be on a permanent basis, or whether it does happen to be coming up and down the leagues. I mean, from my time being a season ticket holder, it seems that we've been in the Premier League for most of the time. But when you're constantly scrapping about in 17th place, finishing 1 point above the drop zone most years, it can get a little tiresome watching you, especially when you got somebody like Tony Pulis in charge, and you're just watching these 11 men defend for, against a team that you should probably be beating. When you're watching that, you sort of think, at the end of that spell, in I think it was 2018 that we ended up going down, you think, I would actually, I've never watched Championship football in the ground. I was thinking, I would quite Championship. I don't, I've never watched it really before. So I thought it might be a welcome surprise. And be it now, I think, it looks to be perhaps the way we're heading, but, it might be the case that we might end up becoming a yo-yo club a bit more often than usual. Obviously, we've had quite a long spell in the Premier League before we went down most recently. But yeah, it seems that might be the way to go. I'd probably prefer a stable position, but if that's got to be the way it's got to be, then we just got to get on with it, I'm afraid.
Tom, obviously, if you look at Blackpool, they're kind of the team that nearly did the yo-yo. Obviously, after getting relegated and losing in the playoff final against West Ham. Some respects, maybe a blessing in disguise. Obviously, looking back at our recent past with the last owners in charge, do you think Blackpool could have been that team that were like West Brom in terms of, we might go up, we'll spend some money on the team, ideally invest in the training ground, players, staff, you name it, but be up and down? Or do you think Blackpool would have been that team, or do you think they could have actually maybe stayed in the Premier League? We've seen teams like Sheffield United this year really struggle.
Yeah. I think... sorry.
Sorry, Tom, go on.
No, carry on.
Yeah, sorry. I think personally, if if results went differently, I suppose you can say if to lots of games in the Premier League, because it was a pretty random season, being 10th on, I think, New Year's Day it was, and still managing to go down. I think it was one of those ones where it was all gung-ho, as we know with Holloway, and we definitely should have game managed, a lot more in the Premier League. But as you say, it was potentially a blessing in disguise, and that year back in the Championship was phenomenal. We played some incredible football and got ourselves to the playoff final again, and there has been no reason, if we did invest properly, why we wouldn't at least be one of those teams which sat in around the playoffs in the Championship, a bit like Derby have been over the years. So for me, would I prefer to be like that or in the Championship? I think obviously yes, I would. Current circumstances, there's no reason why in the next sort of 5 to 10 years why we can't be that team with the right investment and the right sort of personnel around the club, and we'd be in a much better position for it in a few years' time than we would have been under the previous owners. So it was tough to take over those years, but I think in the long run, after all that happened, I think we're kind of over that a little bit now, and we can look back with fond memories in some respects, and then look forward more to the future now. So yes, we could have been, but I think, I hate to say it, but I'd much rather be in the position we are in now without the previous owners and the investment and fan base we've got now.
Couldn't say it much better. Gareth's just said, regarding to what Louis said before about a manager coming in and defending, he said get used to that with Fat Sam in charge. Coming back to you, Louis, obviously currently sitting in the relegation zone of the Premier League after 17 games played. Lost all the games, and most recently the game against Leeds and Arsenal, which I watched on TV. I thought Arsenal played really well that day, and West Brom never got really close. But it's quite worrying signs, isn't it, that you've brought in a manager like Sam Allardyce to sort yourself out defensively. Did really well against Liverpool and picked up a point against the Premier League champions. But to go and have 2 games at home on the bounce and concede 9 goals, quite worrying for you, Louis?
Yeah, well, if you look at Sam Allardyce and his Premier League record, and you think a problem under Bilic was definitely the defence. Probably a bit of problems with the attack, but they weren't so major. But the defence was a bit of an issue. And you think when you bring in a manager like Big Sam, you think, and you see that performance against Liverpool, you think, wow, he's going to really come in, and it might not look pretty, but it might do a job, and it might just get you the points that you need to survive. But then you go and concede 5 goals to a team that you went up with last season, and you concede 4 goals to an under par Arsenal side, of recent years, and then you think, there was no real game plan in either of those games. I'm not really sure what we were trying to do, but we certainly weren't trying to defend particularly well or anything. It looked like we were trying to come out and play a bit too much, and that potentially got us that really shot us in the foot. But yeah, I thought Big Sam might have come in and made some, defensive organisation, but unfortunately, it's not really been the case so far.
Did it give you a bit of hope? Obviously, the first game against Aston Villa, we won't talk about that being a derby game for you, but I guess when you go to the Premier League champions, and for me, I thought West Brom defended well. They frustrated Liverpool, which he's done that in the past with the likes of Sunderland. I think he's done it at West Ham before, and many other teams he's managed in the top flight. I guess that gave you a bit of false hope. Am I right in saying that we go and play really well? We get a goal, which I thought you thoroughly deserved. But then going to those games, we just said it's kind of a bit of a false hope. But hopefully you can get back to winning ways this weekend against Blackpool, despite it being a cup game.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, he's probably going to play a bit of a rotated side against Blackpool, because there's quite a few players that perhaps haven't had the opportunity to get in the Premier League team. I'd probably think, people like young players like Sam Field, Raheem Harper, sort of youngsters that float around the bench and the sort of the periphery of the squad. They might be able to get a game tomorrow, and I'd hope they'd impress Sam, because at the moment something's not working in the team, and I'd hope that perhaps some of these younger players might be able to show him something that he might be missing in this first team.
Yep.
Yeah. I was saying today that I was speaking to my friend who's an Arsenal fan, and he watched the game, and I watched the Leeds game as well. And I just thought, I watched both Liverpool and the Leeds match. I think that's the order you played in, isn't it?
Yeah, Liverpool, Leeds,
yeah,
Arsenal.
I think the Liverpool game, I was watching it, and I was watching it mainly because fantasy team and getting into it and stuff like that. And I just thought, sort of, you think Liverpool could do something. And the more the game went on, you just saw sort of Big Sam's effect on the game and how you organised, and he actually countered them a couple of times where I thought you could have gone and scored, and you looked really dangerous. So I was really looking forward to Leeds match and how you set up against them and stopped them playing, but it didn't come to fruition like that. I'm speaking to someone at work today, and I just said, actually, I prefer them probably to play the first team currently, just because of the way that sort of their morale is and their mentality, based on, like you say, someone coming in and showing Sam what they can do and actually attacking Blackpool and wanting to prove their point and getting the Premier League team. So why do you think the games, obviously Arsenal, I mean, credit to you, like you said, it's an under par Arsenal team, and maybe you should have done better, like conceding 4 and stuff, but you think now they start playing their youngsters, they can do that to anyone on their day, like they did at Chelsea as well, didn't they? Why do you think the games were so different from Liverpool to those two? Because you were the polar opposite. You were unorganised. There was no sort of game plan. And what do you think changed? Did Sam allude to that?
I think he saw the fact that we were playing two teams that are around us in the table. They were at the time anyway, before they beat us, but they were around us in the table. Obviously, you've come up with Leeds, so you'd hope really that you can compete with Leeds. And I think he tried to. I didn't actually. I said on my podcast, I couldn't see a game plan in either of those games. I'm not sure. I expected it to be 10 men behind the ball for 45 minutes, like it was in the Liverpool game, and then have a good go in the second half, which worked. And as you said, we nearly nicked 3 points out of it. I think we tried to play a bit of football, but I don't think that he's, Sam Allardyce is known for really playing football, so I'm not sure whether that would have worked. So he did try and come out and play a bit more football in those two games, but as soon as the first couple of goals go in those two games, our heads just dropped. And, as it was in the Crystal Palace game, it could have been 5 or 6, and indeed in the Leeds game it was.
Looking at, obviously, West Brom in a bit more details in terms of stats. 1 win in 17 in the league, 2 wins in 19, one of those in a cup competition. Something needed to change, didn't it, Louis, in terms of whether it was players going out or managers leaving, another one coming in, which obviously Slaven Bilic has paid the price. Didn't take him long to get back into football, though. I think this week he's already back in a job.
Yeah.
Were you a bit surprised in terms of the way it happened? Because just before he got sacked, go to Man City, a really tough place to go, especially when they're on form, and to pick up a point, and for the players to show the spirit that they did, and whether you watched it or not, I'm obviously guessing here, but the way that the commentators and pundits were going about that game, it seemed that the players still had fight and wanted to prove a point with Slaven Bilic, brought in obviously some players in the summer. So are you a little bit surprised in terms of how that happened and how it happened straight after that Man City game?
Yeah, it was so untimely, the sacking. I couldn't believe it. I think, a couple of weeks before that, you lost 5-1 to Crystal Palace, and I think, fair enough, that's probably his time to go, if it is going to be his time to go. If you lose 5-1 to a team that you should really be competing with quite well, and you lose 5-1 to them, you should think maybe he has to go after that. But that Man City 1-1 draw, I watched the game, and every player was giving every bit of energy that they had, and they were playing for their manager. And I think that decision was decided before the game, and after that Newcastle game that we lost 2-1 in, I think the decision was decided. But still, Slaven Bilic went out there and he organised the team to get a point. And again, it could have been 2-1, but then again, Man City did have their chances. We did have quite a big chance with Karlan Grant going through on goal, and he failed to finish it. But the sacking of Bilic was just so untimely. I couldn't believe how they could sack him after that 1-1 draw. I mean, the owners are a bit to blame here because, well, a lot to blame really. They haven't really given him the funds to create a good team with. But yeah, I think the sacking timing was terrible.
Tom, your thoughts? Obviously, you're into fantasy football and following the Premier League as it was at the time. Everyone was surprised. I think Gary Lineker on social media was saying, I'm shocked after a performance, what we've witnessed last night. It just seems to be a current stage where coming into December, January, where teams in that lower stages of the Premier League or bottom half, should we say, start to hit the panic button, don't they, and go and get rid of a manager, despite the team on this occasion still fighting for the manager, because when the manager loses the dressing room, fair dues, I think you've got to go. But on this instance, as Louis just said, just quite surprising, really.
Yeah. One word from me. I think I was talking to my mate about it the next day, and I just said, they've sacked Bilic. And he went, what? After last night? And I just said, yeah, we both watched the game. I had De Bruyne captain, I was fuming. But, let's put it bluntly, if they wanted something different, they shouldn't have gone and get Fat Sam, because you can't sack Bilic. I mean, yes, sometimes he's played, some awful games, but there's sometimes when West Brom have looked, fantastic, and they haven't had a great season. So the person you go out there, they thought, oh yeah, I definitely know who's going to keep us up is Sam Allardyce. And, with all due respect, he usually does a really good job. And it's only, maybe because the last two results have been poor, you think it is a poor signing in hindsight. And I think at any point in the year, you appoint Sam maybe early on, and like you say, after the 5-1, you think, yeah, I can understand why. But if the mind was made up, I would be interested to see if West Brom if Kyle Grant did score that chance and they win 2-1, has Allardyce already sort of signed the contract, and are they going to sack him anyway? So for me, it's a really naive move from the owners, and I don't see how you're going to get any better putting Sam in charge. They're not going to start flying up the table because, like you say, they haven't signed very well. They've got championship players, and they're not very experienced in the Premier League. So Bilic, for me, is going to show a lot more fight and a lot more organisation. And I just think he's got a bit more composure about him as well. We'll see how Sam copes in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, but with all due respect, if we win tomorrow, for me, the pressure's already on him massively, because 3 losses in a row, especially to sort of lower league opposition. I don't expect them to lose tomorrow, don't get me wrong. We have got a chance if they make rotations, but they should come through it, naturally speaking. But for me, it's a really naive and poor decision, and something, I wouldn't like to be the person that's made that decision come the end of the season if they've gone down, because you're left with egg on your face, really, because Bilic didn't deserve to be treated like that, in my opinion. And like you say, to draw 1-1 at City was an outstanding result that many teams are going to do this season. So why would you not give him the opportunity after that to go and show what you can do after that result? I don't know. But for me, it's one of the worst decisions I've seen for a long time.
They seem to suggest that the decision was already made before that Man City game, maybe thinking they're going to get a battering, Louis, isn't it? And that wasn't the case. And as you said, the owners have probably got eggs on the face, haven't they?
Definitely. I mean, the owners, they've got a lot to be responsible for. It's clear Bilic has had problems with the owners over the past 6 months or so. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the transfer window, we had quite a few problems with Bilic having to march up to the board and say, "Look, I need some money to keep this team in the league." And then just before the season started, they went and sold probably one of our best centre backs in Ahmed Hegazi to Saudi Arabia. A lot of West Brom fans I saw back that move. I thought, but it's not really the move. I mean, if you sell your centre back for £5 million and he's 32, I think, Ahmed Hegazi, so he's obviously getting on a bit, and he's going to lose his pace a bit, quite soon. But the fact that they did it behind his back probably says a lot about what our board's like, really.
Go on, Tom. Sorry, you're going to
No, I was going to say, I was going to ask about that. You brought it up already. Bilic is the kind of guy who probably challenges the powers above, and they didn't like it, like you say, and they maybe forced his own hand a little bit. But I think, in my opinion, I might be wrong. Bilic probably a lot better than I do, but he's a sort of manager that he would probably walk away saying, "I've done all I can, and I tried to, get who I wanted to get this club up, and you want to sack me, that's your decision." But he's quite a proud man, isn't he, Bilic? I remember him at West Ham, and he always went out of every interview with his head held high. So what sort of opinions did the West Brom fans have on him?
He was really highly regarded by a lot of West Brom fans. There was nobody really calling for his head, especially, I know, obviously not after that 1-1 draw against City, but before that there weren't still many people calling for his head, because they knew who we'd be bringing in instead, and it would be somebody, perhaps on one hand you could have somebody like Eddie Howe, maybe somebody who plays a bit brighter football, or you go to somebody like Sam Allardyce, which is what they've gone for. Bilic was, a man who really wore his heart on his sleeve. Every game, he'd give 100%. Whether we were, you were 5-2 down at Everton or whatever it was, or whether you were 1-0 up at Sheffield United, he'd still give you the same effort. And obviously, he's not going to go down without a fight. And the fact that the owners weren't giving him the budget that he needs to keep this team in the division, he's not just going to sit back and just let it happen and just let this relegation go on his CV. He is a great man, and I do have a lot of respect for him, and so do a lot of West Brom fans.
Louis, talking about, obviously, you brought up their transfers and that stuff coming here, and Gareth's got a comment in, so thanks, Gareth, for keeping the coming in. It's much appreciated. Obviously, we've seen one signing today, which was Robert Snodgrass, experienced, 33 years old, joins on an 18-month contract. Bar him, what do you think West Brom will do in terms of business? Is it maybe, do you think maybe Allardyce is maybe players he knows can get him out of trouble, or do you think it might be a slightly different transfer window in your opinion?
It'll be players like Snodgrass. I mean, Snodgrass is a good player, very hard working, great left foot on him as well. So he's going to be a good signing, especially he's got 6 months left on his contract at West Ham. So we've obviously picked him up for a pretty small fee, I'd assume. But it's going to be a lot of players like that. Players perhaps not getting a game where they are. Names mentioned perhaps include people like Phil Jones and that sort of thing. So they're going to be older heads, which I suppose we do need a bit of leadership, which I hope that some of these older heads can bring. But I hope that if we do get relegated, it's going to be quite hard to shift a lot of these players, and I think that's why Sam's getting them on short-term deals. I doubt Sam will be here at the end of the season if we've got relegated, or in fact, if it looks like we're going down, because he doesn't really need this on his CV if we do go down, if he wants to get another job. But yeah, in terms of transfers, I think you'll see a lot of older heads coming into West Brom. It won't be anything like the recruitment we've seen with people like Dean Garner and Pereira coming in. It'll be old, experienced Premier League heads who can hopefully fit the system that Sam wants to play.
Okay, you took two players out of my mouth then who were going to say, like Pereira, who is obviously a fantastic player. Was he on? I think he was on loan last season, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was on loan last season. A great move for, I believe, from what my research was, £8 million. Dean Garner surprised a lot of West Ham fans when he left. I think even Mark Noble came to social media to explain kind of unrest with that decision. And obviously Carlin Grant, who's £15 million from Huddersfield, if that obviously number's correct or in that ballpark. So
yeah,
it's not spent money compared to Blackpool's spending in the summer transfer window. It's quite a lot more zeros, I think, are added onto them. It's not like he's not been backed, is it? Or the club haven't been, like I say, the team haven't been backed to the manager. So again, he's going to have to make some interesting signings, and I think Phil Jones has been linked with Newcastle as well. So it is going to be interesting in that respect. And as you said with Snodgrass, I'll read the Albion press release out. They've just said the 33-year-old midfielder who has scored 117 goals in 586 senior appearances has penned an 18-month contract at the Hawthorns. The former Scotland international arrives at Albion 3 years after joining the Hammers from Hull City. He's also represented Aston Villa, Norwich, Leeds, Stirling Albion and Livingston way back in his youth as well. And Sam Allardyce has a few comments there. He's delighted that his man's coming to take the challenge with us. He's experienced and Premier League quality, which will add. He's a left-footed player, which will give them balance. Balance is a big thing in football. You've got team has got to be right in terms of that. So would you say from Allardyce's thing that West Brom are a little bit unbalanced in terms of how they play, and could that be reflected in the results that they're picking up?
Yeah, I think we're a bit heavily sort of balanced. I wouldn't even say we're balanced in any, like heavily balanced in any direction. I think it's just this sort of mess of a team. You've got a couple of good defenders. I think Semi Ajayi being a notable one in the defence. He's probably Premier League quality. It's just more about spreading a bit of Premier League quality across the park, because at the moment you've got, like I said, you've got Semi Ajayi at the back. You've perhaps got Conor Gallagher on loan from Chelsea. You've got Pereira. There's not much Premier League quality everywhere on the pitch. There's a bit there's a bit of, Premier League quality in different parts of the pitch, and it's not really particularly balanced. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to fill that 11 with Premier League experienced players.
Yeah.
So then he's got that balance to play the system that he likes.
Perfect.
When it comes to the recruitment, obviously, Bilic, we've just named all the players, which, in my opinion, are top quality signings, which add quality to a lot, especially Pereira. He was, some quality games this season already, like with Everton, etc. Was he doing the recruitment, or do you have someone doing your own recruitment? Because just the reason I ask is you've gone from signing really young, exciting players like that, and yes, you do need some experience, but it kind of defeats the object of what Bilic was trying to build when you go ahead and sign maybe Snodgrass and Phil Jones, and they're really short-term fixes for what you probably, or he wanted to achieve long-term. So, I don't know what your opinion is on that, or if you know who was doing the recruitment. Or
we have a guy, his name's Luke Dowling, and I think, if I'm right in saying, he's the director of football. So he he gave Slaven Bilic, in terms of I think this is in terms of the striker thing, he gave Slaven Bilic options for strikers. Slaven Bilic picked which one he thought would be the best. So he had, there's a guy called Habiba Diallo who plays his football in France. He was one of the options. And then Karlan Grant was another, and I think Bilic chose the players, but this guy called Luke Dowling, he deals with bringing in, like giving him the options and who he's been able to negotiate a good deal for. I think Luke Dowling made the decision for Big Sam as well, from what I can see from the West Bromich Albion press release about him. He was doing a lot of the talking about how this was his idea and, it's going to be brilliant and all sorts. So, yeah, Luke Dowling's the guy behind the scenes. I'm not sure West Brom fans are particularly endeared towards him, but, he seems to be the one making the decisions in terms of recruitment behind the scenes.
Do you think Sam's come in and said, I want to make my own signings if I'm coming in then? Or do you think he's gone the other way and said we need to sign some experience now? Because like I said, it's quite a polar opposite decision to start signing some experienced players, because you're now in a relegation fight. It seems pretty backwards to me to go from one extreme to the other, because ultimately if you were going to go down, you should go down having a fight and not paying a lot of big wages and still conceding a lot of goals, which I think bringing in players like Phil Jones isn't going to do you any favours, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think Sam has come in with his demands. He's come in with, I'm going to need X amount of money and I'm going to need your permission to make whatever signings I need to make this work. Because obviously the board and Luke Dowling have put their trust in Sam to keep them up, because obviously he's got that know-how, as we all know. But he's put his trust in Sam, I think, with some of these signings, because there's quite a few of them which I wouldn't make, and certainly under Bilic you wouldn't make. So it's obvious that Big Sam has that sort of pulling power with the people behind the scenes at the moment.
Fair enough.
It's fascinating. I think we can go on for hours about that and how teams need to invest in January to stay up. And obviously with the pandemic going on and funds, it's going to be interesting to see if he can bring in his own players. One comment here before we move on to a bit more stuff about Blackpool and their run. Gareth's got a comment in here, and Ryan as well. So I'll read the two out for you, Louis. Gareth says, how do you rate Matty Phillips? Obviously came to Blackpool from Wickham, I believe, and had a fantastic start in the Premier League, scoring on his debut against Blackburn. What are your thoughts on him? Obviously he's developed now, he's a bit more mature and still playing in the Premier League, but what are your thoughts on Matty Phillips?
About Matty Phillips, he's just become our captain at West Brom temporarily, I think.
I listened to your podcast
at the start of the Pew List. At the start of the Pew List era, he really flourished. He was up there with De Bruyne for assist in the league. I think that was because he took the corners, to be honest. But apart from that, he was looking a fine player and a good buy from QPR. But at the moment, he really does look to have the heart of a pea, I'm afraid. I don't know what's wrong with him. I mean, if you look at the goal that the Tierney goal against Arsenal, where Furlong got spun inside out, you look further down the picture, and at the bottom of the picture, you see Matt Phillips walking towards the ball. So that says a lot. He doesn't work hard enough for me. There is a really good player in there, a really strong, skillful, fast winger. But yeah, he hasn't shown it for quite a few years now. I think a lot of West Brom fans are calling for the team to get rid of him.
Interesting. He's always a player who can excite fans, can't he? I don't know if he's lost that bit of pace that he had at obviously Blackpool, being 8, 19, 20 years old at his time at the club, but he seems to be that player that he can get fans off the seats, and I'm sure many Blackpool fans will agree with that. And before we move on to more Blackpool stuff, just a final one from Ryan Dunbar. He just says, do the parachute payments still count for Albion? I'm guessing obviously they've had a number of years where they've gone down and you get three instalments of it. But there must be enough money in the West Brom bank account, you would have thought, to help you, one, try and stay up the season, but also keep the club solid and have a core foundation going forward.
Yeah, I'd have thought we'd still have some parachute payment money left after the previous time we've just gone down there. But I'd have probably assumed that a vast majority of that would have gone into the owner's back pocket. There's quite a few finance-related documents that I've seen floating around on Twitter, whether they're real or not, which shows mysterious amounts of money seeming to be disappearing from the club. So I'm not quite sure where that money's going, but I think a lot of West Brom fans have made their mind up about where they think it's gone.
Obviously, all alleged that's as well. So we'll see. Not seeing the accounts. But Tom, moving on to Blackpool, obviously they'll play West Brom this weekend. Obviously had a really good run so far in the 2 rounds that they've played. Not conceded a goal, scored 7 in the 2 games. 3-0 win away at Eastbourne Borough in the first round. Gary Medine, the goal machine, scoring 2 in the 58th and 68th minute of the game, with Jerry 8 scoring late on. And the second round, a 4-0 win away at Harrogate. An own goal, Grant Ward, Jordan Gabriel and Kemp getting on the score sheet there. It's been quite nice, hasn't it, FA Cup? Obviously, a bit of a distraction when things weren't going too well, but the team seemed to be enjoying life in the magic of the FA Cup.
Yeah, I think Eastbourne was one of those games because we're on telly and we never do well on telly, and they were well up for the fight. And it was one of those games where we thought, let's not get an upset here. And despite the opposition in both games, we can only beat what's in front of us, and we've organised ourselves really well and played some really good football. So, yeah, it's been really good, and I think the players, sorry, not the fans because we can't be there, but the players tomorrow are really looking forward to sort of playing Premier League opposition, and I think we'll see that tomorrow. I think fingers crossed for a bit more of attack and display, and from what we've seen the last couple of games, but. Yeah, I think the magic of the FA Cup, especially if we can pull off a result tomorrow and we get a double draw. I think they draw on the 4th and the 5th round on Monday. It'll be interesting to see what our route could potentially be. So one I'm looking forward to, sort of a non-lose situation, and one we should definitely go out and, go and attack and try our best to get through. So what are your thoughts on it?
Personally, for me, I think it's a winnable game. Obviously, I think Louis can probably back me up here a little bit. I think Allardyce said in his post-match interview after the Arsenal game that he's going to give some of the fringe players that haven't played much playing time under his kind of short tenure there at the moment a chance to play. So are they going to like come into Blackpool on a cold winter's Saturday afternoon? I'm not too sure. So there could be an upset in there, and I do hope that the Blackpool players bounce back from 2 defeats where, obviously not going to go into too much details, 2 games where we probably should have picked up a point, or, well, maybe all 6, should I say, really. Probably in too nice saying a point, but points in the last game. So hopefully they come out of the traps and really start quick. And with Critchley's experience in the FA Cup last year with Liverpool and the Shrewsbury game and all the controversy that went around with that, with Klopp and stuff, I think he'll be wanting to get a result, and hopefully the players can go out there fresh mind. What have they got to lose, Tom, really, in terms of going out? If they go out as a Premier League team, you think fair dues. Fans will think that they're towards the bottom. They've won 2 games all season in 19. It's not a great record, but fans have to remember that they are a League One team for a reason. So it's there to be won, I think. So fingers crossed come 5 p.m. that we can get ourselves in the hat for the next round, because it's definitely doable. Just whether we turn up on the day. Blackpool fans, obviously, if you're listening in the chat or you're listening to the audio later on, have a think what your FA Cup memories are. It's, like I said, a historic tournament and one that many teams have won over the years. And and Blackpool have obviously won it once back in 1953. The game that was known as the Stanley Matthews Final. I was looking back at some of the games. Blackpool entered at the third round, beat Sheffield Wednesday away, then Huddersfield at home, drew against Southampton, but won in the replay, beat Arsenal in the sixth round 2-1 at Highbury, and then beat Spurs in the semi-final to play Bolton. Great memories for Blackpool, and I think they put something on their social media pages this week about the game and Blackpool lifting the trophy. So hopefully some more memories to come. So for Blackpool and them, but Tom, I guess we did talk about memories before, but it's a good chance, isn't it, for Blackpool to get to the fourth round and ingest a bit of money into the pockets, because the pandemic's hit many EFL teams quite hard. Obviously, we've been backed by Simon Sadler, which is fantastic, and fans have bought season tickets, which again, huge credit to the fans in hard times. But it's a real opportunity for the club to progress, and like you never know, it could be that side that go quite far, a bit like Brentford have done in the I think Carabao Cup.
Yeah, it's a massive opportunity, and I think if we go through tomorrow and there's, Chorley managed to go through or someone like that, and we managed to pull them and get them, like you say, we're into the fifth and sixth round, and probably unknown territory for Blackpool over the years. But tomorrow, for me, if you're going to pull a Premier League team that you want to do well at, is probably going to be someone like West Brom or maybe even like a Palace. And I know probably would have been a hard opposition, no disrespect to West Brom, but it's someone that probably don't want to take the cup seriously or risk any injuries or put their best players out. But on the flip side to that, I'm a bit nervous because they play their sort of youth team or the players that haven't had the chance this season, and they're going to want to perform, and it only takes them to get through. I don't know if you've seen what Villa are doing at the moment, but their youth team are drawing against Liverpool at the moment, and Liverpool got a few first team players out, so it's a chance for the young players to show what they can do as well. Maybe a chance for people like Bez or if he gets a chance to start tomorrow, to do what he wants. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it's like you said, it's certainly a massive opportunity.
Definitely. Just reading a few of the comments in here, Gareth and Mick in the chat. Gareth says, I remember Blackpool beating Blythe Spartans in the 90s. John Burridge was their manager at the time. Late goals by Clarkson. I think it finished 3-2 to Blackpool. And Mick's also got his comment in saying, playing Spurs at home in the early 90s was a good memory for me despite losing. I had a date night at Bloomers. So, hey. The magic was still there, wasn't it, Mick, anyway, that night? Cheers for getting those in, lads. Hopefully a few more to read out as the evening goes. But I know we touched about Sam Allardyce here, but I want to just, obviously, quite an interesting season in the 95-96, if I remember rightly. But obviously he's been caretaker manager down the road at Preston before being offered the job at Blackpool in 94, where he put the Seaside as 12th after falling out the playoff races with one win in their final 11 matches, not the perfect 10 which we saw in 2007. But the next season, in his kind of second year at Blackpool, finished third, missing out on automatic promotion on the last day. And Tom, we were speaking here how bizarre this was, and Mick and Gareth might be able to back me up here a bit more. But to go to Bradford City and win 2-0 away from home, and you think, right, we've got the away leg out the way, we've got that monkey off our backs, we can come home, play off football, and we'll see ourselves at Wembley. But that wasn't the case, was it? Lost 3-0 on the Fylde Coast. Obviously, I was kind of, I would have been two, yeah, probably two at the time. But that's what went wrong. It just seems a bit mad, doesn't it, that you can be in command and then all of a sudden lose 3-2 in aggregate.
Yeah, I think as history suggests, he was passed a brown envelope, it was allegedly said, and it was such a disparity in performance. You've gone from, playing away and controlling the game 2-0 to apparently not turning up on the night, not turning up on the night, should I say, and, conceding 3 goals and being sort of pumped out when he was, from what we were talking about earlier, he was sacked pretty quickly after that, and it just seemed all a bit fishy. Maybe it was one of those nights, but I think to most Blackpool fans, and if Blackpool fans can comment it, sort of get their comments in, I think it was one of them ones where something just didn't feel right, and who can say what went on, but it was not a good memory for Blackpool fans, and and he was sacked, and probably rightly so. For Blackpool fans, it's one of their worst memories, actually. Oh, there you go.
There we
go. Yeah. I think it just, sometimes as a fan you can't fathom games like that or experiences like that, and that was certainly one of them.
I can't imagine being the one that kind of is not two-legged game, but even I look back at United in the Premier League being 2 goals up and then losing 3-2 on in at full time. You just think, how did something go wrong? Was it a decision that changed the game, a key moment? It's madness, really, and it's obviously we don't have John or one of the older guys in the podcast to give their thoughts on the game, and they probably were there at the time, but I can imagine, Mick, it was not a good memory at all. But we've enjoyed obviously recent promotions, and I think the most successful team, aren't we, in those winning at Wembley and Millennium Stadium in the past. So it's not been a bad roller coaster ride in the playoffs for Blackpool fans. But again, I'll come to you, Louis, next. Excuse me. Obviously, Sam has gone on to manage some big teams, should we say, in the Premier League after Blackpool, joined Notts County. And then after leaving Notts County, went to Bolton, replacing Colin Todd, the famous Derby captain that Brian Clough brought to the Derby back in the 60s or 70s to take them up the leagues. And he beat Preston in the playoff final, Tom, which was great for Blackpool fans. But you look at Sam Allardyce's history, Louis, and he's got a way of, especially Bolton, that he can build teams up if he's given time, but he's predominantly known now as the man who's going to come in at Christmas, December, and try and save the club. And it's a bit harshening, really, isn't it? I don't know what your thoughts are, because he's obviously gone on to, or had a good managerial career, but he's known now for keeping teams up in the Premier League. Sorry, Louis. I don't know if there's a delay or not. My fault. Is he there still? Louis, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I must have missed what you last. Yeah,
that's all right.
Sorry, the last bit of your question was breaking up a bit.
There's always technical issues on the Seaside podcast. I don't know what it is in the system, but we talked about Sam Allardyce before. Obviously, he's been manager at Bolton and been successful, taken to Europe. Was linked at Man City before there. I think Chinese or Thai owners were coming in at the time, but he's obviously known now as a Premier League manager that comes in and saves team from relegation. Do you think that's a little bit harsh on Allardyce, considering what he's done at other clubs? Cut out again. I'll come to you. Go on. Sorry.
He's got the track record of being a proven survivor, but then again, he's also, as you said, he's been able to build up some Premier League teams. I don't think he's going to be doing that with us. Perhaps, definitely not if we go down. Perhaps if we stay up, he might just, stick around and see what he can do with the team. But you see that he's got this massive bonus on the table, £2 million for himself if he keeps us up this season. So it might be a bit of motivation for him to go out and spend in this transfer window, and then perhaps stay a bit next season. But I think a lot of West Brom fans would rather him just keep us up and then give him the boot, and then maybe we'll have a look at getting some managers who perhaps play a bit more attractive, expansive football. It's not really the way you should be doing things, but it's just it's a terrible situation that we seem to find ourselves in now, really.
Tom, your thoughts are a little bit harsh on Allardyce being known as that, or has he put it on himself, really, that he can keep teams up? And like Everton, he carried on for another season and did really well, putting them in the top half of the table. What are your thoughts on Allardyce, and has he been his own... I'm trying to think of the word now. Has he been his own worst enemy and being labelled as the man who saves teams?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think he's the go-to man, a bit like you mentioned earlier, Louis, with Tony Pulis, and the sort of player that the manager, that is going to at least give you some organisation. They'll keep you up, and you're in safe hands. He did really well at Palace as well when he kept them up. He did some incredible things at Bolton, but I also think he goes there and his mantra is always, I will make a team slightly better than sort of when I took over. And Everton, fair play to him. Even the fans at Everton, though, which is really strange. I know a few Everton fans, and they said, we still don't want him in charge because we played some just awful football. Now, it's difficult with football fans because you can win games 1 or 2-0 and be really organised, but be quite bored of it, and be successful in many respects. and that's what you'll get with Allardyce. And it's difficult to know what football fans want. Do they want to go down and, concede lots of goals but score a few more? But it's difficult to know. For me, he's getting a bit tiresome, and I think football's moved on a little bit. And I think managers like that, and we saw it in the last game as well, when they lost to Arsenal. When they lost to Arsenal, he started getting a bit ratty with the news report at the end, because he made a sort of a tongue-in-cheek comment about them being relegation rivals, and obviously them going out and outplaying them all over the pitch. He started having a little bargain with them, taking it with light-heart banter. He started getting a bit of a nasty reaction for that side of it. So I think for me, football's moved on past Allardyce, and like I said earlier, and it's a half decent appointment in a sense of just to reassure a side, but the time it came, it was poor, and to go out and get someone like Allardyce for me is poor. So I wouldn't want him at many Premier League clubs now, unless you're in a really difficult position, and I don't think West Brom were at the time.
I completely agree. Moving on to from an old manager to a new manager in the dugouts, Neil Critchley. He spoke ahead of the game on Saturday, which will be broadcast live on BT Sport 3 Extra. And Neil Critchley said he feels his side has done well to warrant their place in the third round. Obviously, those wins against Eastbourne Borough and newly promoted to the EFL side, Harrogate Town. And he goes on to say, we're excited for the tie, and the magic of the FA Cup is alive in Blackpool, the head coach said. We know it'll be a tough game playing against a Premier League team, but we've done well so far to get to this stage at the competition, and we want to give it a good account of ourselves on Saturday. It's tough to know what side we will face in terms of their personnel, as Sam Allardyce has already confirmed he intends to make several changes. All we can do is focus on what we do well, prepare as best as we can, and be ready for what's to come. Tom, obviously coming to you on that one, he seems to be saying the right things at the moment in terms of whether it's criticising the team for not putting the chances away, but there I think he speaks quite well that we've got to focus on what we do best, and hopefully that's enough to see us through to the next round.
Yeah, we alluded to that after the Shrewsbury match, didn't we? We just want to play the game that we know we can play, and he's absolutely right. Like I said, he's saying the right things again, and hopefully that translates onto the pitch, because he'll want to go out and play how we want to play. We're at home tomorrow, so we want to take the game to them, and like you say, it's not about what they do, what team they play. It's about what we do on the pitch and how we sort of take their game plan to us. So I really hope after two sort of, in my opinion, quite poor games. I know you've got slightly different opinions of the Bristol Rovers match, but for me, it still wasn't good enough in comparison to what we were doing. And tomorrow, despite it being FA Cup, I want to see the game plan at work, and if it's 3-2 to them or even 2-1 to us or whatever, I want to see a better performance so we can take it into the league and have a real good go with what's left of the season. COVID pending. So
we shall see. Just left in the chat if anyone's seen it. Get your score predictions in. We'll come to that very shortly, and maybe Louis can shed a bit of light on who might play for West Brom, as we've just talked about. Neil Critchley saying he's not sure what side they're going to go for. But looking at games which the teams have met before, both Blackpool and West Brom have met on 88 different occasions in League and Cup. Blackpool won 31 of those encounters, with West Brom winning 42, and the two teams sharing the spoils on 15 different occasions. The first meeting was back in 1901 in the old second division. The game finished 2-2 before the second meeting that year saw the Baggies take all 3 points in a 7-2 win. Remarkable, really. You don't see that unless Aston Villa are playing Liverpool. Will it happen tonight in FA Cup? We'll have to wait and see. But obviously the last meeting, Louis, obviously was back in the 2010-11 season. Blackpool beat West Brom 2-1 at home. 2 red cards, if I remember rightly, for one, the defender, I can't think of his name, and then one for Java, I think he was called. Java. That really put Blackpool...
One for Gonzalo Yara and one for Ibanez, I think, if I remember rightly.
That's the one. Blackpool scoring Charlie Adam penalty from the resulting sending off on the first one, and then Luke Varney slotting home after a great move down the right wing, with the Baggies scoring a consolation goal late on. Tom, I don't know if you remember or you went to that game, but again, Blackpool just weren't at the best that evening. I've seen a few fans look at the highlights most recently, but a great win, and one that, like you said, put us in a comfortable position going into the Christmas period.
Yeah, it was one of those matches which we made really difficult for ourselves, because after the 2 red cards and the goal, I think, we were buzzing at 2, even at 2-0. You think, right, let's push on. Or we couldn't ever see out a game in that season, as we know. But a really good finish from West Brom. From memory, he sort of bent it in from a tight angle, poor defending, as you'd expect in the Premier League. But it was a good night, and a pretty mental one with the 2 red cards, because the second one was just an outrageous tackle. I think it was the ball in the corner, and he just came through and just smashed him away and got a straight red for it. So, it was a good night, and ultimately a really good win in the Premier League at home. So we made it difficult, but as someone put in the comments, never in doubt.
When did Blackpool ever make it easy for themselves? And Louis, coming back to you on this one, sorry. Obviously, the reverse fixture, 3-2 for Blackpool's goal scorers that afternoon were David Vaughan. I remember a nice curling effort from 25, 30 yards. We were like, wow, we're going to win it. Don't normally win it. The Hawthorns, that I think we'd lost in the season before in the Championship as well by 3-2, if I remember rightly. And then also GTS scoring for Blackpool. But West Brom left it late, 87th minute on the clock. Peter Odemwingie, a player you mentioned before, pops up and scores the winner. So a good afternoon for your side that afternoon, if you remember rightly. Where was he gone? Oh, we've lost him. Apologies, anyone watching the stream or listening. He's just left. Hopefully we can get him back. He is back now, to be fair. We've had a few technical issues. I'll wait until it loads. Welcome back, Louis. I don't know if you heard
about that.
It's okay. Don't know if you heard the question or thing, but obviously a 3-2 win for your side back in 2011 in the Premier League game between the two sides. Peter Odemwingie scoring late on for your team. A good win, like I said, for Blackpool in the first one, but for your side in this second or reverse fixture.
Well, obviously, in that sort of season, we still had Di Matteo in charge, if I remember rightly, who brought us up the previous season, and he was a very good manager, I think. As you saw, he went on to win a Champions League trophy with Chelsea. But yeah, that day for me, I must have been there. I don't particularly remember the game, but I do remember Odemwingie, of course, as a fantastic player for us in that particular season. Obviously, you'll never help yourself endearing yourself to West Brom fans if you drive yourself to an opposition club to try and force a move on deadline day. But he still really is a well-respected player amongst the West Brom community, and one that I'll remember for quite a long time.
Yeah, a fantastic player, and late upsets as Blackpool saw on many occasions back in the Premier League year. Obviously, I've asked fans to get their score predictions in, and one that came up before, which they beat me to at the Muckers watching the show this evening. Welcome to all the Muckers. Obviously, wishing Tom should have a shave, which he should do. Professional Tom, come on. But they reckon it's going to be a 2-1 victory for Blackpool tomorrow at the Mighty Pool, they've said. Tom, coming to you first, your score predictions for tomorrow's game?
I want to be positive. Yeah, let's go 2-1, Paul. I agree with the Muckers. Let's go for a positive result. I have a feeling it could go to penalties after a 1-1 draw, but I'll go for 2-1 in normal time. Interesting.
Read a few more. Ray Gregson, welcome Ray to the stream. He reckons it's going to be a 2-2 draw. Obviously, the Muckers have got their commenting. Gary Ford's listening. Hi, Gary. He says a 2-1 victory for Blackpool. Mick said 0-0, and I predict a penalty shootout win. Assume no replays. I'm actually not sure what happens. I don't think there are replays at this stage. So yeah, Louis, I'll come to you, and then I'll read mine out. But what are your predictions for tomorrow?
I'm probably going to have to go. It's got all the hallmarks of a cup upset on it, if I'm being honest. But I feel like, as you said earlier, Tom, with these hungry players who are going to be, determined to win a place in Big Sam's side, I'm going to say 1-0 West Brom.
I hate mine. I enjoy reading them out and listening to yours and the guest answers, but I hate saying mine. I think I'm going to go with Ray on this one. I think it's going to be a 2-2. And if it goes to penalties, which I'll have to check before, I think Blackpool will go and win. It's a shame we don't have Sam Walker in goal after 2 penalty saves in 2 games. He would be a fit for that occasion. But yeah, I'm going for a draw with hopefully no replays and Blackpool win on penalties. So yeah, it should be hopefully a few goals in it, because Blackpool have just lacked that in the last few fixtures in those games against Shrewsbury and Bristol Rovers. But we're going to call it an evening there. Louis, first of all, it's been... I think we might have one more comment in there. I've missed Isaac's off. Sorry, Isaac. I'll read yours out before I finish. Isaac says 2-0 to West Brom. I see us struggling to break them down, whilst we'll have plenty of the ball. We just won't be able to create many chances. And in my opinion, I won't take them. I reckon they might catch us on the counter-attack. A typical, probably West Brom and Sam Allardyce performance, shall we say. Mick said, can we kick Louis off after his prediction? He will be gone soon after the show's finished. I can say that, Mick. And Mick's also asking, can we play our lone keeper tomorrow, which I believe Sam Walker has been sent back to his parent club, Reading, after his emergency loan was cancelled, with Chris Maxwell back in the team. So I'm sure all Blackpool fans and those after seeing his performances wish him all the best. I thought it was a young goalkeeper at the time, but he's 29, and I'm sure after his performances for Blackpool, he'll no doubt be a number one somewhere in the near future. So all the best to Sam Walker, and thanks for what he did in the Blackpool shirt, despite it only being 2 games. The Muckers said, all the best, lads. Great podcast. Cheers, guys, for listening. Much appreciated. But we are going to end it there. A huge thanks to Tom and Louis as well. Louis, I hope you've enjoyed yourself on the show.
Yeah, it's been great to be on, and all the best for tomorrow, lads.
Cheers, mate. Hopefully Blackpool can win. The best team wins tomorrow. And Tom, obviously, great to have you on the show as always.
Great to be back. Great podcast. Thank you very much.
Perfect. And just like that, Mick said, great podcast again. Cheers, guys, for listening in. That is going to be the end of the show. The Seaside podcast will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. to review the game. Hopefully Blackpool can get themselves in the hat for the 4th round of the Emirates FA Cup. Can they go further in this competition? We'll have to wait and see. And you can join the podcast, whether it's John, myself, Tim, Nick, or Matt, or Tom. Have your say on the show. So stay tuned on social media to find out details on how you can do that. But from all of us, it's good night, and hopefully the Seasiders can pick up 3 points. Then I've ruined the show right at the end, haven't I? Ruined it. Hopefully they can pick up the win and see themselves in the hat. As Gary says, up the pool.
Up the pool.